Welcome to the Mazzamuto Method, the show where we build with clarity, lead with confidence, and live with discipline. I'm your host, Gino Mazzamuto, along with Mario Mazzamuto, and we're the owners of Mazzamuto Construction and Bella Costa Cabinets. And our mission is simple: help you eliminate chaos, solve problems early, and build a life and a business you're proud of. Every episode gives you a clear plan, practical tools, and the mindset to execute at a higher level. This is where the craftsmanship meets leadership. This is the Mazzamuto Method, and let's get to work. Okay, so last episode we talked about balancing life and work. So this episode adds to that conversation in a way, but we're going to talk about balancing work and customer relationships. So our guiding principles for us as business owners were something that our dad taught us early on, and that is, beyond creating a good product and having a good outcome for the actual physical build of a job, it's as important, if not more important, to make sure that you have a good outcome for the homeowner. So many times as contractors, we focus on trying to get the job done, building something that we want to have our quality name on. A lot of times we, as business owners, we tend to put the homeowners as a secondary position. And that's something that our father was really put in our minds early on, that you have to focus on the customer primarily and the job almost secondarily. And that's important because you hear these stories about the contractor not communicating with the homeowner having issues with the contractor, and the contractors, typically those issues come up because the contractor is so focused on doing the job that he doesn't help the homeowner manage their issues.
Yeah, so that's a real big thing. And I think really part of being a contractor, it's really a large set of shoes to fill, and it may not sound like it, but realistically it is, because we're not just there to build something. We're there to be a problem solver. And really that's what we're being hired for. When somebody hires, a general contractor like us, we're a design build firm. They're not just hiring us to, follow some simple set of plans and build something. They're hiring us from start to finish to solve a big problem and a complex problem, a problem that they don't want to have to solve themselves. They maybe are solving different problems at their own job.
And they don't have the necessary knowledge to do that. And that's why they're hiring you, right?
That's right. Yeah. So just like we wouldn't try to go perform an open heart surgery on ourselves or, on our loved one, we hire a doctor that's a heart specialist for something like that.
Yeah. And I think that the core principle, and this podcast should serve a couple purposes, and what we're intending it to do is not only be a knowledge base for homeowners, but also for business owners. We've had the experience of multiple generations, so we've seen the pitfalls that you can run into, not only with our experience, but we deal in a world where we deal with other business owners, contractors. A lot of the people that we've hired in the past as employees, and even currently, are people that have run construction companies on their own, and they haven't succeeded. And actually, an interesting point that most people don't know about is most city inspectors or building inspectors, you'll notice that some of them, if not a large part of them, especially the older ones, have run construction companies, and they just didn't succeed. And the main point of why these people didn't succeed, and if you ask them, what do they say?
Customers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Customers. 100% of the time, it's customers.
Yeah.
This is what people don't realize getting into construction. They anticipate that they have to know every single thing about construction. They need to know every single code. They need to understand, how to frame a house, how to pour concrete, all the way down to finishing the house, which is true. They do need to know that. But what they don't anticipate is, especially if they're going to start a company with employees, that they need to understand psychology. They need to understand, they need to be a great leader.
Right.
They need to be good with understanding and dealing with emotions of their employees, but more than that, their customers.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because what people don't anticipate is what's the big deal? We're just gutting somebody's kitchen and replacing it. Yeah, we do it all the time. Well, from a customer's perspective, that is a really big deal. That's like the doctor telling you it's not a big deal. We're just going to perform open heart surgery on you. You're like, what? And the doctor says, yeah, I do it all the time. But from your perspective, that's a really big deal. And so it's what most contractors don't have, that capability to anticipate and know how to deal and mitigate, really, before you even have to deal with it, the stress and, turn out the opposite way and actually make it a pleasant experience.
And I think that's the differentiating factor, is that you have carpenters or contractors, but if you're just a guy on your own, you maybe one employee, then it's not that hard to deal with, but you still have to make sure that you're putting the customer first, and then you're able to absorb the customer stress. And one customer a long time ago put it to me this way. She said, you have a lot of intestinal fortitude. And I thought that was a funny way to put it. But what she's saying is that customers don't know the process. And so there's a lot of anxiety around that. And so if it's just spending time with them to answer some questions so they can feel comfortable, that's really important. But I think the one thing I want to make clear is, for the business owners out there, you have to understand that if you want to grow a company and you want to take it from you and one guy and you want to start adding on guys and doing all that, it's a dynamic shift in the way that you have to think. You got to step out of the mindset of just running the day-to-day operations. And like Mario said, learn the psychology of business ownership, because you're going to have to manage employees that have their own issues, whether it's at home, financially, otherwise, and you have to manage the homeowners' problems. Because I always say the joke of a homeowner hires a contractor to build their house, and then you end up becoming their financial counselor, their marriage therapist, different things like that, because you end up spending a lot of time with these homeowners.
No, absolutely. It's funny. So a little tiny bit of backstory is that Gino and I we were both born into this trade. Our grandfather started this, and our dad, our whole lives was a contractor. And some of the biggest complaints that we ever heard from him, and he was constantly saying it, is that he had to be the therapist all the time. And that's one thing he didn't anticipate, is that he was going to have to turn into a therapist, not only for his employees, but for his customers. And it's a really big thing. Thank God for me, myself personally, I actually spent a good, I don't know what part of my life, I'd say in like my early 20s, just because I had some personal stuff that I had to deal with. And so learning psychology and getting really into like self-help and psychology and stuff like that, I didn't realize how much that was going to help in being a contractor and being a business owner, but it has helped immensely, because one of the things that you realize is that you're just a problem solver, and you're a good problem solver. You're a person that could remove themselves from the emotional side of things, or try to get less emotional about it. And if you're able to do that, it's like more than half the battle.
That's the hard thing, though, is that it's not only it's so much of a multi-tier approach. And the thing is, it's not only just the psychology around what we've talked about so far, but also your own, how you navigate the thing. So one of the things that I noticed as I stepped into the role of running a business, and because we started off as laborers, for my dad's company. I mean, there was a point in time where where we weren't allowed to do anything but dig ditches. So we had to move up through the ranks and do certain things. And there was with our family, especially with my father, because he's such you know, a lead from the front type of guy, we had to kind of step in and just kind of jump off into the deep end and show him that we could do it. And so one of the things I noticed as I was building my own kind of dynamic with the customer, and that's is that I would go into a job and I would say, you know, we found this, we found dry rot, we found that, you know, whatever that was, that somebody did work on your house and they messed this up, and I thought I was coming from the perspective of let me show you these problems and explain to you what's going on in like a diagnostic way, and I thought I was doing a really good job on that. And then I slowly started to notice, and sometimes it was feedback from like my project manager or people on the job. They would say to me, "Hey, after you left, the customer was all stressed out about it." And I go, "Why?" And they go, "Because you freaked her out. You freaked them out, you know, because you're saying all this stuff." And so I had to learn for myself, like, yeah, you need to show them the problems, but you need to do it in a way that you're not scaring the crap out of them.
Yeah. It's, again, I'm going to use the analogy of a doctor, because what do you say? When people say that the guy's a really good doctor, one of the things they point out is they say they have good bedside manner, which means that they're using empathy and they're seeing things from their patient's perspective. And it's a very important thing for us to do, is to see things from the client's perspective. We've got a number of employees that work for us that don't really go out to the field much, if any at all, that are just in the office. They're just doing office work. But recently in the last year, we did a office remodel, and there was a lot of complaints about dust and dirt and noise and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was, and it was the thing I pointed out multiple times. I said, I think this is a really beautiful thing, because it's teaching everybody the client's perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes you got to wear that pair of shoes for a day or so to feel it and to understand how can we mitigate that for a customer? What can we do to keep the dust down for a customer? What can we do to keep the noise down for a customer?
And that's always, there's a story that I tell, which was, as a young man in my teenage years, you know, my father would drag me around to jobs and things like that. And I remember one night sitting outside of a customer's house, and it was when the wintertime, so it got dark early, and it was probably like 6 o'clock at night, and we're standing out there and it's cold, and he's hosing down the driveway, and I'm saying, "Why the heck are we doing this? You know, I want to get out of here. I want to go home." And he's like, "You can do the best job that you can and provide the best product that you can, but if the customer comes home and pops their tire because you left a nail in the driveway, that's the thing they're going to remember about that job." So
100%.
you could do. And the psychology behind that is, yeah, we're talking about a nail and that, but it goes further than that. It's just talking about when you're focusing on getting the baseboard straight, you know, making sure the framing is done right, you know, caulking and painting and all that, and you're putting your best effort into producing a great product. You also have to remember sometimes it's not, that's, you know, that's obviously should be a main focus, but just as much is like, did that customer have a good experience with you? Were you relatable to that customer? Did you, when they tried to ask questions, did you get frustrated because you were trying to get stuff done, or you're balancing your workload of managing your guys and paying bills and doing all that? And that's another thing I kind of want to transition to is that aspect of it, because again, this podcast should be for business owners as much as it is for homeowners. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen that kind of translates to this whole thing is business owners getting so caught up in the financial side of the job and paying bills and making payroll and all that. That's super stressful, right? I mean, to have that burden on you, and then so you're, no matter how long you've been in business, and how profitable you are, you always have this weight of the overhead that pushes down on you, and then you have that temptation, to be like, hey, you know, we should do X, Y, or Z, but I need to get you off to another job or something like that. So you end up cutting corners on jobs, and that can be a very slippery slope.
Well, yeah, and that plays into it for a customer's perspective is if an estimate is low, it's not always a good thing. Like, if somebody is comparing three different estimates and one estimate is much lower than two, that's actually problematic. That's not a good thing. Like people go, oh man, let's go with this guy. Look how much cheaper he is. But the old saying of like you get what you pay for. I mean, of course it's true, because if somebody is that much cheaper than two other people, why do you think that is? It's not because they're like Superman and they have some like magic formula. It's because that person is planning on cutting a bunch of corners. They're planning on or they don't have the infrastructure that they need to really take care of a client.
But also on the other side of it is you have contractors that have that pressure of running the business, so they're hungry and they're trying to get jobs, and so they tend to go like, oh, you got a quote for this much, I'll do it for this much, because they need the work.
Yep.
Okay, that's totally understandable. People do that.
You have to.
Everybody's done that
Sure.
at some point in time.
Sure.
But the problem is when you do that, you're making a commitment that you're going to do that. Don't get into that knowing full well that you've cut your margins down. Get into that job and then realize what you've done, and then try to make up for it for either cutting corners or trying to come up with change orders or things like that. And the premise that I'm trying to make is people have come up to me in the past, and because we are primarily out of Martinez, California, and that's been our hub for many years, and so a good portion of our work is just in a small community, and so people ask us how we stay consistently so busy with so many employees in such a small area, and I tell them it's very easy. Just say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say, and that's the key. Is that you have contractors, and this is the stories that everybody hears, right? Why didn't a contractor show up for a week and left your job sitting there? Why did you can't get a hold of him or whatever? He left a mess, or that he didn't pay his subcontractors or things like that. And it's because he's trying to get as much money as he can, whether that's from greed or just from being in a bad position financially that he got into from potentially maybe taking low cost jobs, right?
Yeah, cut it. Yeah, no, it's 100% what it is. Like the whole robbing Peter to pay Paul. It happens more than most people think in construction, and it all stems from being too low on their estimate or being too willing to cut their own estimate just to get a job because they have to get a job,
or just greed,
whatever it is, or not knowing what they're doing and underestimating them, and they think that they're okay, but they're really hurting themselves and they're hurting the clients, because when you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, then you're not taking care of Peter.
Yeah, and then but another perspective, another layer to this is also the guys. I had a guy that works for us recently tell me that his last employer had him being the project manager, being the lead, doing all these things, and then he shows up to the job one day, the owner does, and tells him, I'm super pissed because I'm not hitting my margins. I should be making 60% margins on these things. And he's like, what? That's crazy. Like, but the thing is, so it's not treating the customer right, not treating your guys right. And again, it could be a multi-tiered thing, whether it's greed or just that you have a financial burden. But the point of it is that either way that you do it, you're either losing good guys because you're not taking care of them, or you're losing good customers that could refer you to your next job.
Right.
And that's the key, is that so many people don't understand that portion, is that you end up burning your bridge.
It's, it's a easy thing to overlook, but it's slowing down and making sure that your integrity is there and that you're taking care of everybody. You're taking care of your customers. You're taking care of the guys. And I'm pretty sure that almost 100%, if not 100% of our employees and employees that we've ever had have had some sort of negative experience, either working for another contractor who doesn't treat them with respect and is rude to them, or, works them too hard and just demands too much from them, or just, didn't pay them. Another one of our guys, I'm not going to name any names, but he had a guy that he worked for. This guy's been with us for over 10 years, but before he came to us, he had a guy that he worked for that was promising to pay him. And just, the guy was like, okay, that's fine. If you can go another week. Well, come to find out, not only did he not end up not paying him, the guy skipped town, but then him and all his coworkers found out that the boss was basically using their social security numbers and hiring other people that were also illegal, and then 1099ing those individual people for the other people's income as well. Mm-hmm. So the guy, all he did was just rob everybody, and for as long as he could. And he also took tons of down payments and huge deposits. Yeah. 50% deposits from clients, and literally skipped down. This guy they ended up finding out that he moved to Mexico. Yeah, that's literally what he did. Yeah. And he just robbed everybody.
I think a lot of homeowners have heard all the stories, but I don't think they understand the depth, and how problematic it actually is in this industry.
Yeah. And the reasons that it happens.
Yeah, exactly. But, you hear, because most of the homeowners, what they're hearing stories from is their friends, their families,
right?
Maybe some news source somewhere. You had that big one from that big ADU company that just recently went bankrupt. Yep. With all kinds of projects, and so you think, oh, here's a huge company, but it doesn't matter. They sometimes those are the worst ones because they're so over leveraged.
Yeah. Yep.
But the thing is, people hear these stories again from family members or friends, but being in the industry, we see it all the time. And so the percentage of how bad as a customer you think it is out there, it's probably about 3 or 4 times as bad as you think it is. Because you have people that work without licenses, people that lease their licenses to other people. So you hire somebody that you think is licensed because they give you license, but it's not even their license. Mm-hmm. And this year, today we're filming, we're recording is the 6th of December. And this year I can think, just sitting here off the top of my head, at least 5 to 6 jobs that we've done, that we've had to come in behind other contractors. Some were, had homeowners that had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars and not had even gotten 50% of their project done. Mm-hmm. Some homeowners had gotten jobs done, and there was that one with that big that mold. They had literal mushrooms, like giant size mushrooms. Like when we pulled that stove out, there was literally mushrooms growing behind the stove, and it was because the contractor didn't waterproof. So this customer had built an ADU, a garage conversion ADU, junior ADU, and it didn't get waterproof. So we had to gut the whole thing out.
Yeah.
And so not only was that a financial thing, but their daughter was living in there with their grandson.
Health problem.
Oh yeah, big health problems. I mean, the whole thing was riddled with black mold inside there. Mm-hmm. And then there was that other one that we did. The homeowner had paid a HVAC service to put solid ducting in their crawl space because they had rat problems. I think she paid like $20,000 or $30,000 to get it done. And then when we were remodeling her house, we were in the crawl space. and I don't even know how it came up because I think we were moving the heater or something like that, and we were talking about putting the ducting in the attic, so we didn't have to deal with that problem. And she said, "Oh, I had them," and I go, "No, you didn't. I mean, it was literally just the cheapest
Old soft ducks.
old yeah." And the reason was is because she was. I mean, who goes down there and checks that thing?
The homeowner doesn't go down there and check it. And that's the problem, is that, there's, unfortunately, it's a hard comparison. If people don't know whether they're comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges when they're comparing contractor bids. And that's why, knowing the background of that contractor, and, we work for plenty of people who find us online and read our reviews and stuff like that. And that's fine and all. But we really prefer the referral side of things too. And it's because we remodeled their friend or family's house, or multiple friends or multiple family members' house. So they know what our end product looks like. They know what our end product looks like 5, 10, 15 years later. And that is so much nicer for both parties involved, us and the customer. When we walk into their house, there's not even a question. They're not stressed at all, because they know that we are going to do what we say that we're going to do.
Yeah, it
and
gets you over that initial hurdle of just trying to make the customer feel comfortable.
For sure. And so, not every contractor can say this, and this is part of the reason why, we do what we do, and we took over our dad's business, because we've been in business since 1957. And so, just that longevity alone really, really helps ease a lot of people's burdens and stresses and stuff like that. But yeah, from my advice to any contractor out there is, really pay attention to the emotions and how to mitigate those things with a client. And from a client's perspective, is make sure that the contractor you're choosing has not just some good reviews, but a good background, been in business for a little while. Maybe you can talk to somebody who they've done a job for. We offer it up to every single client that doesn't know us, is, hey, you want to go out and see some of our job sites, current job sites. You can meet our current customers. You can meet customers we've,
also community forums is big. We have a local community forum in our town.
Yep.
And a lot of people find us that way, and that's a good resource too.
Huge.
But because it's you're getting, when somebody looks up a contractor, we pop up at the top all the time, homeowner recommendations. But I think it's easier said than done from a business owner's perspective, because everybody wants, well, I would assume there are shady people out there, and they just don't have any moral scruples. But I think most people, when they start a company, they want to have something that they're proud of, because most companies, especially construction companies, they put their name on it. Like us, Mazzamuto Construction, that's our name, and most contractors do that, whether it's their last name or whatever that is. So they're doing that because they have a sense of pride in it. But so their intent is always good, but when you get backed up against the wall, when you're dealing with problems, especially financial problems, again, there's always the kind of idea of I can charge this person a little bit more. I can not, I can cut corners here or do something there, or pull this guy off. But whatever you're doing, you're potentially causing an issue or treating the customer badly to try to make up for that deficit that you're dealing with. And that's the problem, is that when you do that, you're trying to fix a crucial issue right then and there, but you're burning, you're hurting yourself, your longevity, because it's a slow build, to make a business. And even, people think that because we've been in business for so long, that it was like me and Mario just stepped into it, and it was already built for us. It wasn't.
No.
Because our dad and our grandfather, they ran the business different than we did. They were more focused on, the day-to-day field stuff. So the business that we have now is leaps and bounds bigger and more operational wise than it was when they were doing it. And that's just because that was the kind of the way they most older generations ran it. They always wanted to be in the field and doing stuff like
swinging
that.
a hammer themselves.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
which we don't do because we're focused on is the management of
Right.
it. That's our sole focus.
Right.
And not that we wouldn't want to be out in the field, but swinging a hammer, we would. We enjoy doing that sort of work, but we can't possibly manage everything that we manage and keep every customer extremely happy and all of our employees extremely happy if we weren't thinking of management all day every day. It takes a lot to facilitate that.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, so when you're building a company, you have to. It's kind of a slow grind because you have to do a job, do it well, go on to the next job, do that job, do it well, and you keep doing that. And then at some point in time, what ends up happening, a lot of these jobs, you're going out and you're hunting and you're finding and you're doing advertising and you're doing things like that. And then at some point in time, those older customers come back to you or you get referred to, and then you start building up momentum because now you've created this kind of solid foundation of a good reputation.
Right.
And then you start to reap the rewards for that. The problem is a lot of guys get into it and they just go, oh, let me get as much money as from this job as I can, get on to the next one. And so you never end up building that foundation that ends up paying it forward later on.
Right. And, to even go a little bit further on that too, let's just say, there's a lot of newer companies, younger guys that are starting these companies that as soon as they can, they put so much emphasis to getting online reviews and building out, a website and all this fancy stuff that looks really great to the public. But they don't put a lot of time and effort into their systems themselves and making sure they're building nice and slow and making sure that they're taking care of all the basics. And where that becomes problematic is, they might get a bunch of phone calls because their fancy website and all their reviews and all that, but they haven't put all that time and effort into everything that you need to think about to take care of that client and make sure that that client is 100% taken care of from start to finish. And so it's the old saying of, and the person I've heard say this a lot of times is if anybody listening has heard of the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, he talks about this with real estate investing. And he talks about how a good investor is much more like a milk farmer versus a cattle butcher. It's the same kind of method. And it's just, it's a lot less sexy because you can make a whole lot more money by buying and butchering cattle and selling them. But that's it. You get you're kind of getting that one time kind of use out of that thing. The way that we look at our business and our life is that we're much more like a milk farmer, where we're taking a lot less profits along the way. We're doing it nice and slow, but what we're doing is it's the longevity of the business. And so, when you do something like that and you build that, you'll get a random referral from a client that maybe you did a job for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. It tells a friend or a neighbor or family member, and that person comes to you. And again, there's massive built-in trust there, right? So they come to you like your family at that point, and they go, hey, I got this remodel that I want to do. It's like $1 million. And I'm ready to go. And I don't want to talk to nobody else. I only want to talk to you guys. I'm not going to go call a bunch of different contractors. And from a contractor's perspective, I mean, is there a better dream customer than that? Somebody who's not going to price shop you. And not that, it happens, but it's also like, we're not aiming at the bottom of the barrel. And so we want to do quality work. And that comes with a little bit of expense because we want to buy quality material and do good stuff.
Yeah.
And so what's so nice about that is that if you slowly take care of and really just nurture your clients, that will come back and it will benefit you like 100-fold.
Yeah, and the other thing that, I agree with all that. And the milk farmer adage is also important, I think, because you can't get into any business with the idea of I'm going to create a business and my sole reason is to get rich. Is
Right.
that because that's just the wrong way to look at it. You're going to find that that's not the case. What you want to do as a business owner is get into it to try to build something that has longevity and sustainability.
Right.
Because one of the things that, and the reason me and Mario are in the management side of things and not in the field, is because I saw, me personally, like I said, we come from a background where my father, I mean, he's 80, still running around, but you know, all the guys that he worked with, these old school Italians, Portuguese, Spanish, Irish, and all these guys that basically worked until they died. But a lot of them, and I just remember seeing, like, because I would visit Home Depot a lot, and I would be walking in the doors, and I see these guys, and they're like in their 60s, 70s, and they're walking loading material, but they can hardly stand up straight. They're broken down and
beat up,
and because everybody thinks, I'm 20 years old, I'm 25 years old, I'm 30 years old, I can lift 3 sheets of plywood and carry it. And yeah, you can do all that, and that's all fun to do that kind of stuff when you're young. But my point that I'm making is, you never, or a lot of people never think about the fact of when they're 40 and when they're 50 and when they're 60. So they work, not realizing that they're not actually building something, because everything is on their back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that you build a company that's on everybody else's back, but you hire employees and you take care of them. And so you're actually able to provide a service for them just as much as you. But when you get to a point where you can't work anymore, you're not stuck having to try to do labor work, because you never actually built a business that can sustain itself.
Well, and that's exactly the difference between being self-employed and the business owner.
Right.
Self-employed, if you call in sick, nothing gets done. Business owner, you can call in sick and you have systems and people in place that things still happen, and that ball keeps rolling properly.
And that's the thing. But that's like going back to my earlier point. That's the difference, because guys get into this work, whether you're an HVAC contractor, a floor installer, a contractor roofer, whatever it is, you start a business, and then you're out there swinging the hammer and doing the labor work, which is great. I think everybody needs to start that way, because because the guys that there's so many groups on Facebook that I follow, that you see all these guys they go, I'm looking for a sheetrocker to do X, Y, or Z tomorrow, or something like that. And it's all these guys looking for these, so that, and most of these guys never did. They're just like real estate agents for construction. They go out there, sell a job. They have no way of doing it. They got no employees, and then they go and find these people to do it.
It should be criminal.
It should be. Yeah, it should
be criminal. They should not be allowed to do that.
So having guys that actually have the work experience, that actually put in the time to understand, because the problem is when you don't appreciate, and you end up treating people like crap because you think that you're better. I'm just going to hire this guy to do. The funniest thing that I get the most kick out of in these groups is when somebody says, I need somebody to do to mud and tape and hang drywall for 800 square feet of ADU or something, and I'll pay them $25 an hour. So not only are they looking for these employees, but they're trying to set the wages, because they have no respect for the industry.
It's disgusting.
So but the ultimate point that I was trying to make is that when you start a business and you start working on the ground and doing these things, you have to understand, if that's what you want to do for your life, then that's great, and there's no problem with that.
Nope.
A lot of people do that, and they make good livings off of that.
Yep.
But if you want to create a business, you have to know whether you can do that or not, because again, so many people that have worked for us, or that I've known that have tried to run a business and tried to run a construction company and failed, is because they can't switch out of having that managerial mindset to where they
out of that role.
They
don't
can't
know how to switch out of that role.
And
that's a big part of being big part of, doing what we do is learning how to grow, and learning how to grow. You have to learn you kind of have to be okay with that past you dying a little bit.
But I don't think everybody's capable of doing it.
I don't think
And that's the reason why these guys that I'm saying have run businesses before and have failed. It's not because they're bad people.
No.
And it's not because they put out a bad product. They're actually really some of the best people I've known.
Yeah.
The problem is that they don't understand the weight of managing customers and managing employees.
That's right.
And that is so difficult and so underrated. And I remember when I started switching into this management role and started putting my tool belt down, the kind of, I don't want to call it animosity, but it was almost, I felt it was a little bit disrespectful, me personally, but I understand where it was coming from, is when you show up on these jobs where you got you guys working, and these are guys that you worked alongside of, and now you're showing up, in clean clothes and all this kind of stuff. And they kind of undervalue you because they're like, look at this guy showing up here, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it must be nice.
Slept in today.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
He's got the easy life. He's doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until they kind of come in our office and they sit around our office for 30 minutes and they're like, oh my God, you just like fielded 5 phone calls and, some, fire here or there that you just put out or problem that you solved. And that it's a different sort of a stress. When you're in the field working every day, the stress is on your body.
Yeah.
When you're in the office working or managing a company, the stress is in your head.
Yeah. And I think in some ways the latter is the harder
for sure,
because you can go home and rest, but when you have the management side, especially as a business owner, you can't, just like our last episode, you have to find that separation, and a lot of contractors can't. That's why they end up becoming alcoholics. They end up getting divorced, drug use, gambling, whatever it is. Not only is the industry ripe with people that take advantage of customers and treat employees like crap and it's kind of like a Wild West, but they also have the other side where you have a lot of drug use and gambling problems in this industry because of the stress that comes along with that kind of stuff. So
unfortunately, there's too much of it. We've got a few employees of ours that are smokers, and I think they probably adopted that just from the stress level of one of these guys used to own his own construction company. Been with us for a long time, actually. But one of the things that we tell him is that we try to help him with that. And actually, to this one individual, I've told him specifically, hey, as soon as you decide to quit, you get a raise. Because we want to, I think it's a beautiful thing to try to help somebody with their health too.
Yeah.
And, and there's other ways that you can mitigate stress versus smoking. You don't have to be some weird hippie doing cross your legs and meditating all the time.
Yeah.
Although, some form of meditating or like your version of meditating is a really good thing because it helps you clean out your brain and the stresses of the day.
Yeah. So I think again, as we start to taper this podcast down and wrap it up, I think that the main points that I wanted to convey is for the homeowner, understand that when you're searching for a contractor, that it's not just about the bottom line of the dollars. We do a thing for us in our business where we actually do a pre-assessment call, and that's to kind of feel out the customers before we even go out and meet them, just to understand what they're trying to achieve, whether their budget aligns with the project they're trying to do. But more so, it's more about a compatibility thing. You have to be able to get along, and that contractor that you're hiring, you're not only hiring to do the work and build you something, but navigate you through the issues, be a person that you can lean on to manage your stress, manage your anxiety around the project, and also give you the insights that you don't know because you're not in the industry.
Yeah, it's an important thing. Yeah. So we do a pre-assessment check before we even show up to somebody's house because we don't want to waste their time or our time, just to make sure, And sometimes we know right away that the personalities aren't going to be a match, and it's not going to be beneficial to either party.
And I would say that give that same advice to business owners the same way. As young guys, if you're out there trying to start a company and you're getting jobs, know when to walk away.
Yeah.
You
tough sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It is tough sometimes because you see like, oh man, this is a good job.
Man,
I can make money on it.
Yeah.
It's a fun project. I can, do something, that I can be proud of. But you kind of know like the customer's already beating you down on price. They're kind of like, oh, I can't meet you. The only time I can meet you is 8:00 on a Saturday morning or something like that. If they're not willing to work with you and give you the respect that you deserve as a business owner, or you just feel that there's some kind of, especially if you have a customer, if a customer calls you up and says, "Hey, my last contractor left, and I'm trying to find somebody," don't do those ones.
Yeah, yeah. Or be at least if you're going to try to attempt to do it, you better be asking some good questions. Okay, can you give me some backstory of what happened with you and the contractor? Because maybe it's not the customer's fault. Maybe it's the contractor's fault.
Right. But
I mean, and that's why we do take over jobs from other contractors that they screw up as well. We don't love to do it, but we do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, asking the right questions, because here's the thing. Is that just as like, you wouldn't marry somebody that you didn't go on a number of dates with and date them for a while and get to know them, you shouldn't engage in a business relationship with somebody that you don't get to know a little bit too.
Yeah.
And it's a different relationship, but it is a relationship. It's a shorter term relationship and a less involved relationship than being married, but there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. There needs to be a bunch of built-in trust, respect, and that's a mutual respect. It goes both ways.
Right.
And so, for a homeowner, make sure that you click well with the contractor. From a contractor, make sure you click well with the homeowner. And if you both did those things and had a little bit of criteria, don't lower the bar too much, man.
No.
Raise the bar a little bit. Have a little bit of criteria and raise your standards a little bit and ask a couple of questions.
Yeah.
It'll make the process so much easier.
And also protect yourself, because again, don't chase the profitability with knowing that you're potentially getting yourself into,
or the cost savings.
Profitability
or cost savings. From a customer's perspective, Don't chase the cost savings.
Exactly.
You think that like that product is that much cheaper, that contractor is that much cheaper. Yeah, there's a reason he's that much cheaper.
Yeah.
And you'll learn it, unfortunately, the hard way.
Yeah.
And from the contractor's perspective, don't chase that big dollar amount.
Right.
Because you'll learn the hard way that you shouldn't have taken on a project like that. It's probably, if it's that crazy and you're just so gaga over it, likely that you're using the wrong part of your brain, and that you're probably biting off more than you can chew.
Well, and also there's a philosophy that I've learned over the years, which is there's been a lot of jobs that I was like, oh man, I can't wait to get this job. This would be a great job, especially the bigger jobs, because those are great, because instead of you having to do a bunch of smaller jobs and manage those smaller jobs, it's a lot easier to manage one big job where you're staying on for a long time.
Right.
But so you're really gung ho about doing it. And then, especially for me, because I'm such a competitor in myself, that I just feel like I let myself down if I wasn't able to close that job. But I found that through time that sometimes losing out on that, it was actually one of the best things that could have happened to me, whether that opens up another opportunity or it's just something that a big pitfall that I avoided. So yeah.
So what do they say? What's that Garth Brooks song and that saying that some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers?
Yeah, right.
So sometimes that one that you didn't get it for a reason, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's being competitive is a good thing, but also knowing like, hey, this is all learning experience, and we don't ever aim to get 100% of the bids that we write. Like, it would be nice because we put time and effort into them,
sure.
A lot of time and effort into them, and it's work, and it's money out the door when we don't get it, and it's a little bit of a blow to our ego for sure. But you get used to it, and you go, you know what? The reason we don't get 100%, is because we're not writing these bids to please somebody else.
Right.
We're writing these bids to make sure that we are running a sustainable business and we can give a sustainable, great product to clients. And sometimes it's it's the harsh reality of I'm sorry. Sometimes, it does cost that much money to do a good job.
Right. And I don't want to go too far into the weeds with this, but that's also why sometimes charging for an estimate is important, because if we're talking about respect, if you have a customer that just is like, oh, I'm just kicking the tires and I just want to get some estimates and doing, okay, that's great. Everybody wants to do that, right? That's empowering yourself, getting knowledge and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that customers, I don't think, understand the time we put in as business owners to prepare an estimate, especially a good one. We have a previous podcast about takeoffs, but so I won't go into it. But the point of it is that if a customer is just using you to produce something that they're going to push up against somebody else and doing all that, again, that's why having an understanding of who that person is and doing that pre-assessment and kind of making sure that they're invested in you, because you don't want to invest all your time into somebody that doesn't really appreciate it and ultimately doesn't really care about what you're doing. But the other thing is, so that's customer, don't chase the dollars. Business owners, don't chase the dollars and don't chase the jobs and all that kind of stuff. But also just make sure that you have something, whether it's your name on the business or just some kind of guiding principle that you hold on to, that navigates you through the times that you want to do something that might compromise your profession, your professional constitution as far as what you saying you want to be, because that is the quickest way to having an unsuccessful business. And I put it, I use there's if you think about like a restaurant, this is the best way I can put it. You see these restaurants that become really popular, and because whether it's the business owners behind the stove cooking and all that kind of stuff, and he builds this thing up, and then he's like, oh, it's really good, and now I'm going to start going on vacations. I'm going to put somebody in there, and then whatever they're doing, they're compromising the quality, whether they're not putting the time and effort into it, whether they're not treating their customers right, whether they just got an ego on, now they think they've made it, and then their customers start to decline. And so the next thing what they do is, instead of going back and fixing what worked the first time, they start raising their prices, getting cheaper employees, and then it's just basically they're just compromising everything that they wanted to be. And the thing about restaurants and business owners and businesses is, once you start to do that, and that reputation starts to get out, it's very hard to turn that back around. Once you go to a restaurant and you have that bad experience, what's going to make you want to go back again? Are you ever going to recommend that to anybody? Mm-hmm. So that's exactly how, with any business, that it happens.
Unfortunately, the way humans are is that humans will go way out of their way to write a negative review, but they don't very often go way out of their way to write a positive review. And so how many of us have had, think about the meals you've eaten out. It's every single person on the face of the earth, at least here in the United States, in the developed country, it's thousands of meals you've eaten out. How many reviews have you actually written? And how many positive reviews have you actually written? Or how many times have you gone into the kitchen to thank the chef? But how many times have you complained when something wasn't right? Yeah. How many times have you complained when, like what you ordered wasn't cooked the right way or whatever? I'm not saying you're wrong for it. I don't know why it is the way that we are, but it's the way the human nature is. And so, just you gotta focus on the small wins. You gotta focus on that integrity. And I'm talking from the business owner's perspective. You gotta focus on, you're not gonna crush every single job and make $1 million on every single job, and you don't need to. What you need to focus on is, okay, even if I'm breaking even on this job, how do I make sure that the customer is extremely happy at the end of this job? How do I make sure that the product is the best product I can turn out at the end of this job?
Well, even you say breaking even on the job.
Sometimes you're losing money.
Exactly.
Sometimes you're
That's the
losing money.
worst. And
That's the worst.
And
And it
everybody's
happens,
done that.
man.
Everybody's done that.
It happens. It doesn't happen to us anymore because we have a lot of experience, but it definitely did happen when we first, Gino and I both have gone out on our own outside of working with our dad, and 100% this happened to us because that's what you need to do to get your own customers and stuff like that is, you're shooting too low too with this price, or you're a little too overly optimistic with how fast you thought you can get something done. And it took 3 times as long.
Or something that didn't
anticipate.
Or doing something that's a little bit different than what you traditionally do, whether, right. You're like a kitchen bathroom modeler, and then you end up building a deck or something like that, and you don't realize the complexities of it or something like that. But, so when you get to that point, the thing is you obviously want to get off of that and stop and mitigate the bleeding. But if you persevere and actually make sure that you not only do it and complete it, but you do it to the best of your ability, you'll not only do you know that you did something good, but the customer will know you did something good. So
absolutely.
To wrap this up, it's all about respect for the customer to the contractor, from the contractor to the customer, from the contractor to his employees, and everything in between. Just make sure that you do a good job and try to put your best foot forward. And there's going to be days that you're going to want to cut corners and not put out a good product. Just try to mitigate those as much as you can. And that's the key to building a good business. And it takes a lot of time. Don't try to get rich. Don't try to get rich quick. And I think you can build a successful business. So thanks for listening to the Mazzamuto Method. If today's episode brought you clarity, confidence, or a useful strategy, share it with somebody who needs it. And if you're ready to build without chaos in your home, your business, or your life, follow the show for more tools and direction. Remember, a strong foundation builds a strong future, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.